I'm basically, I'm afraid, pessimistic about the outlook for the Indian economy. Um, we have already seen all the high frequency indicators showing sharp drops. And the last quarter GDP figures came in at 3%. And frankly, that was feasible only because the numbers for the previous quarters and for the previous 2 years had been dropped. So you can already see before COVID, radical slowdown where average growth over 3 years ending March this year is less than 6%. It's about 5.6 or 5.7%. So this is no longer the economy that used to be there earlier. We have lost momentum for a variety of reasons. COVID has added to that. In April and May and also in March, we've seen very sharp drops in all the indicators that point to what's happening in the larger economy, whether it's electricity consumption or tax revenues, traffic movement. All of them show very sharp drops. And while there is a recovery on some indicators in May, the climb back up to normalcy is going to be a long haul. And with the COVID numbers continuing to decline at a very rapid rate, and possibility that we may well reach 1 million cases, and the death numbers will also start climbing more rapidly. There will be a temptation for many governments at state level to reimpose tight restrictions in the way that Chennai has just done. And there's pressure on Delhi and Maharashtra because that's where the big numbers are. Both governments have said they will not impose a fresh lockdown, but I don't think we can rule it out given what the trends are. And that will do even further damage to the economy. So clearly with unemployment having shot up and people uncertain about the future, consumption will drop. And with consumption dropping, there will be spare capacity, and that means that there will be no investment. We are seeing an extension of the financial sector problems. The government has basically exempted key provisions of the bankruptcy code. The Reserve Bank has done regulatory forbearance and announced a moratorium. So we will not know the full financial picture for a few months because of these changes in regulations. But there can be no doubt that companies are going to be suffering. In the tally that we do at the newspaper of corporate results, so far this quarter, which is the January-March quarter, it's not the April-June quarter. The January-March quarter, the profit figures are down 45 to 48%. Net profit margins are down to 5%. And I have no doubt that the April-June quarter will see a net loss. So you've been already seeing the decimation of the MSME sector for a variety of reasons, including both demonetization and the way GST was introduced. And this is the third knock. And if we're going to be left with a large number of bank loan accounts unable to be serviced, the banks will once again come under pressure. The shadow banks are already under pressure. What held up banking so far was more the retail lending sector, and which is basically commercial vehicles and housing, and that's being affected. So I see multiple shocks to the economy, and the external world does not help. Our exports are down 30% in the latest month, or 35%. So this is going to be a long haul. The best we can hope for is that we'll get a recovery in the second half of the financial year, and then a further recovery next year. Next year will be helped by the low base in this quarter, so some numbers will improve. But if we were to look ahead to February 2021 compared to the pre-COVID base of February 2019, 2020, sorry, February 2022 compared to February 2020, I think we will have a smaller economy then than we did in February this year, which means that effectively 2 years have been lost. And if you were to assume 5 to 6% GDP growth as a norm, then about 10 to 12% of GDP is the basic toll that COVID would have taken on the macro system. On specific companies and individuals, the shocks will be much larger. But let's bear in mind that this will, with the GDP fall this year now almost certain, this will be almost certainly the single worst year since independence. The recovery will, I don't think, will be that quick. 2 years from now, you may get a proper recovery, depending on what we do between now and then. But my fundamental position remains bearish about where we will be, because both savings and investment will be affected, and therefore growth will slow down. We will not be able to go back to the 7-8% growth that we were seeing until 2017. I'll stop with that at the moment.